Hey guys, welcome back to Tennis 360, the podcast where we talk about all things tennis. My name's Anthony Hirsch.
I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about Miami. The first week has ended. We are midway through the tournament, and it's come with a few upsets already to this point, especially on the women's side. We have Sabalenka's already out. On the men's side, we have Rublev and Rune have both gone out. Rune lost to Morozan 6-1, 6-1, which was a crazy result, a double breadstick. There's a few things to talk about. A few things. It's been pretty eventful. First of all, do you think there's something to worry about with Rune and the Morozan loss? I feel like on outdoor hard courts he hasn't been able to really figure it out, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. Obviously, I don't think the outdoors help his serve as much as like the indoors do, for example, and things like that. But it is weird to me that it seems to be such a differential from how he plays on indoors.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about needing to translate that indoor hard court form more consistently to his outdoor hard court form. I think we're, looking at a couple of factors here. It's his kind of third full season on tour. He said that this result was, a result of an illness or a virus that he picked up. His energy levels were lower than he was expecting them to be. I never really love that coming out after a match result, but I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe that is the case. I also think we're at that time of the season where we have these two back-to-back Masters, and it's not uncommon or unusual to see upsets, especially when a player has made the second week of the previous Masters tournament, which he did at Indian Wells, and that was kind of his first decent run of the season, kind of stitching things together. He's also obviously had a lot of change already in his camp this season with new coaches coming in at the top of the year. They're already out and then back working with his kind of original team. So some instability there as a youngster. I also think last year when we looked at his outdoor hard court results, that was kind of fresh off the back of his back injury that he picked up in the summer of last year. So a couple of just like health concerns, injury concerns for him at that stage. So I think it's hard to say for certain kind of why it's going awry for him in these conditions at this point in the season. I think he'll have a good clay court season. He likes playing on the clay. He's had a couple of really good results on that surface. So I think he'll, take this with a pinch of salt. He'll probably tell himself, you know what, it's a bad week. I was sick, and chalk it up to that, and probably won't hurt his confidence too much. But as we return to hard courts in the summer, it's definitely something to look out for in terms of if Rune is able to turn around that storyline in terms of his outdoor hard court performances or not. And it will be something that we'll certainly keep paying attention to as his career develops.
Yeah, I think it's probably been a bit circumstantial at times, like you said, with the injuries last year. I think that's a big thing that we can probably chalk it up to. But I think it's probably, just the big 6-1, 6-1 scoreline in this tournament kind of worries me before both him and Rublev have to defend the final in Monte Carlo, which is just like, that's tough. So
Morozan's a good player, though. I mean, hasn't he gotten a win over Alcaraz before? He can sort of like pop up and be unexpected in terms of his skill level and the energy that he plays at and produces. And if you're, at an elite level of tennis, if you're feeling 10% below your best, I mean, that can be the difference between a 6-4 and a 6-1.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But I guess it was the shocking nature of the scoreline for me that made it, especially after I felt like he was doing pretty well, like at Delray Beach and before, even in Brisbane, he made the final. But yeah, Morozan's been fantastic. I mean, he brings a lot of variety to the court. That is very exciting. Obviously, a very skillful player. I mean, when he came up and beat Alcaraz at Rome, people are talking about the drop shot that he was implementing into his game all the time. He reminds me a bit of maybe like a Jerzy Janowicz back in the type kind of guy who can just play that drop shot kind of out of nowhere kind of player, and also just has a lot to offer, big serve. So yeah, he's impressive. He's a young guy who's probably going a bit under the radar at this point. But yeah, we'll see how Rune recovers. I think clay court for me for a while. I think I've thought that Rune's best surface is clay courts, at least for now. I think for a lot of reasons he just likes the time behind the court to kind of set up his shots. He really likes the movement on the clay courts as well. And I think clay is where it's his bread and butter. Rublev is all out of sorts though. Lost to Lehechka last week, then to Mahac this week. So I just think that I don't know what's going on with Andre. I honestly think that it's probably it might be partially a mental / focus issue after what went down in Dubai. I don't want to speculate on something that it's hard to really characterize and put, make it really objective and clearly substantive. We can only kind of suspect what's going on in that circumstance. But yeah, I mean, I think that any player would lose their focus a little bit after a situation like that. But he needs to regain it fast if that is what happened, because Monte Carlo, like I said, and having to defend there is happening anyway. And he hasn't had great results here in the past, lost to Kyrgios 6-3, 6-0. But, I think anyway, I don't know what's going on with Rublev. It feels like he's not really dictating on the court and being out-hit by players that he's not usually being out-hit by. Once again, though, I will say, though, that Mahac has been really good as well. So, but
yeah, I think it's one of those things, like, it definitely, he could have his eye off the ball. Again, like we're talking about fine margins here, maybe 5-10%, a little bit lack of focus, a little bit of distraction, a little bit of maybe self-consciousness creeping in for sure. But then, yeah, I also think giving credit to his opponents. I mean, Lehechka was hitting a huge ball last week. It was absolutely crushing on the courts at Indian Wells. He really had a solid run there and was causing players all sorts of issues. Then, we see players having a hard time kind of recreate the back-to-back forms. Lehechka lost early then in Miami. Also, the surfaces are very different between slow, windy, colder conditions that we had this year at Indian Wells to very hot, humid, fast conditions in Miami. Then, yeah, as you say, Mahac has been having a really good season this year. He's certainly pushed a number of top players. And yeah, you just sort of think like, okay, if your opponent is 100% on and feeling confident and playing, with nothing to lose, and maybe Rublev is 5% lack of focus for, whatever reason that, from Dubai, and these types of results can happen. So I think he'll probably maybe welcome a week off now, just reset, maybe spend some time with family, friends, kind of just like get his mind ready for clay court season. As you say, he's got points to defend in Monte Carlo, so he's going to have to switch on pretty quick. And we've discussed his issues with his mentality before, but he's a professional guy, and these results can happen. I anticipate him, being able to turn up at Monte Carlo, but it's certainly a worrisome sign that this is happening at this stage of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably just because we're so used to him being so consistent week in, week out, right. It's like, man, like just seeing him lose to players like this, it kind of turns something in your head. Like it's a little bit weirder. It's a little bit weirder and more out of the ordinary. I'll be honest. I wouldn't even be that surprised if losing 10 quarterfinals at slams is even putting a little bit of mental baggage there, because that's the pinnacle of the sport. And if he's constantly getting so close and not quite going over the line, that might lose a bit of faith in his game a little bit. So I personally would also just put an eye out for if that's going on. But yeah, I think we'll kind of gauge what's happening with Rublev, but I hope he can figure it out by Monte Carlo. For sure. And then also, what do you think of Shapovolov is back with the win over Tsitsipas? That Shapo, it was playing well, but I feel like Steph has just been a bit off his game as well. I think Steph shouldn't be losing these matches that he's been losing the last couple of weeks, to be honest. That's what I would probably put it more to. Even his win against Tiafoe last week, I felt like he was playing not his best, and then he lost to Lehechka. He's losing to good players. Shapo is playing really well, using the full court, but I just felt like, I don't know. I feel like Steph is all out of sorts, to be honest.
Totally. I mean, I think if we're talking about worrying results, my worry would be directed towards Tsitsipas in terms of, top players at the moment. Falling outside of the top 10, he's getting more difficult draws early on, and he's not really stepping up to the plate. I think Shapo has been a player that a lot of us have been, hoping that he can get his form back and find some of his top level again. He's a guy that was so close to a really elite level, and then had quite a nasty injury that he's truly struggled from for a year now. And we all know how hard it is with tennis once you've been out for a year, how difficult it is to stitch a couple runs together and regain your fitness and good health. I agree. I mean, I think he played a decent match against Tsitsipas, but again, my worries are more so directed towards Tsitsipas in terms of, his approach seems off. His tactics seem off. I mean, we've talked about this before. I think his coaching decisions are strange. To get rid of Philippoussis in the way that he did after the US Open last year, and now he's back with his dad, and it's just, I don't know whether he's like not enjoying it as much or kind of what's going on with him. But yeah, I mean, the results are certainly subpar. And again, change of surfaces. He is going to have to take advantage of looking at this part of the season as an opportunity to reset. If he wants to be a part of the conversation in terms of a big time player this season and a contender this season. And he would certainly fancy himself on the clay, having gotten to the Roland Garros final last year. But he's got a lot to think about, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Steph probably doesn't always prefer the Sunshine Double as much as some of the other events, for example. Yeah. But I think that him losing at this point in the way he does, I feel like, he seems very unfocused. And I think it's like Rune with that kind of lack of, stability in the coaching box is just going to result in just trouble for him. And I feel like it is almost worrying that Tsitsipas, who's won in Monte Carlo for, won there twice. And then also you have Rune and Rublev, who got to the final there last year. I feel like it's almost worrying that three of the players that you're most hoping can perform well in Monte Carlo, who need a big title like that, are lost early in Miami. And it kind of makes you worry for their chances there. And I'm sure that they won't be particularly happy with their early losses for that form. Rublev and Tsitsipas, like I said, probably none of the three, this is their best, conditions. It's not. But I think that either way, they should want to. They would have wanted to do better than they have. Alcaraz still playing amazing from Indian Wells. I know it's not like the high bouncing kind of conditions that Indian Wells brings, and the super slow conditions that he enjoys. But Miami still plays slower than a lot of the hard courts, and I think he likes this quite a bit. And I think he's just going to continue on the form. He beat Baena, Carbias Baena, 6-2, 6-1. Sinner just got through Griekspoor. That was tough. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but that was a tough one. Griekspoor served unbelievably well in that match, like 75% of his first serves. And at one point, I was watching the match. I just wanted to check the stats. Is he making every first serve in? It's not like he's stepping up to the line and just cracking a huge serve. And that was what was really really impressive and really hurting Sinner. But I saw something like there was a rain delay at 3-3, which perfectly split the match in half. And it before that rain delay, it was 8.67 shot quality for Sinner. Before the rain delay, it was like 9.7 or something, like 9.72. It was crazy. So it was a big change for Sinner after the rain delay came back. And it comes to a top player like that, just finding a way to win, even if they're not playing their best. And that's what Sinner is that's at the level that he's at now. And he loves these conditions. So he found a way. But Griekspoor, I don't think he has that many weapons to hurt Sinner. Sure, shout out to him for absolutely redlining and playing one of the matches of his life to even do that. But it's a bit unfortunate you can play the match of your life against Jannik Sinner and still come out losing with a breadstick in the third, which was the sad thing.
Yeah, tough. But that's the difference between your elite players. They can use a rain delay to their advantage, refocus, and come out there and approach the match a little differently. And who knows if there hadn't been a rain delay, but it looked like Sinner was starting to get on top of it. And I think, it's even more impressive when you're in a best of three scenario that you're able to figure out and turn things around a little quicker. You don't have the luxury of going down 2 sets. So yeah, I think, initially some question marks or concerns over like how that happened, but also maybe a couple kinks for Sinner to work out after Indian Wells transitioning. Maybe, just kind of sort of working through the way his body feels after that tournament where we know he had a couple aches and pains. So in the end of the day, good result, and yeah, he'll be happy to have gotten through that one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Sinner and Alcaraz both still winning. I think that I was saying this earlier when I was watching that match. I was thinking to myself, we're at a point where it was like a Rafa Novak situation where not only are they the two favorites to win the tournament, you almost question, can anybody even beat these two guys if they're at their best level? And it just, that kind of thing where you try to think of matchups in your head in scenarios where it's even possible. And obviously it is. People lose all the time. But, I think we might be heading towards that situation. It seems likely. And I think that, that'll be something to watch as well in this tournament. And yeah, one of the best atmospheres was the Jarry versus Seyboth Wielch atmosphere. If you want to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the unique charm of the Miami Masters is you have a lot of the Latin American, South American crowd support. And obviously there aren't that many ATP tournaments in South America, let alone a Masters there. So this often will bring out some of the rowdiest fans throughout, like in the whole tennis calendar year, to be honest with you. And because these stadiums are a little bit smaller than what you get at a Grand Slam, the atmosphere just picks up that much more because the stands are packed and the sound really picks up and reverberates and people can get pretty close. So, these are players from Brazil and Chile. So, of course, a lot of that crowd lives in the Florida, Miami area. So not surprised to see a big South American fan turn out. And it was really a lot of fun. And you could hear the fans when watching the Swiatek-Noskova match. You were like, is there a football game going around in the background? Like, what's happening? But it's really fun to see tennis played in that type of environment and that type of atmosphere. I think that, tennis has this reputation of being a very upper middle class, like type of fan that, sits there and claps or doesn't really do anything. So I think it's great for the sport when we have these moments where fans are really engaged. And it's impressive also to see how the players navigate that and deal with that, use it to their advantage or not. I mean, I think Nico started the match with like maybe 15% crowd support. And I don't know whether the Chilean fans were late or if they got the memo late or they just sort of started finding their voice in that second set towards the end when Nico clinched it to force the decider. And yeah, I mean, there was jeering between first and second serves. There was it was a rocking atmosphere, but I think both of the players really enjoyed it. At the end of the day, I think they were using it to their advantage as best they could, and in the end, produced some really good tennis. And I think people have in their mind that Thiago can be a threat. He can be a bit of a giant killer. He obviously beat Medvedev, Roland Garros last year. He took out Fritz here in the first round. He can play a big game, and he can really cause some damage. Again, one of those players that has a couple of mental tweaks or kinks to work through if he wants to make an elite level. But he could be kind of Bublik type of character if he decides to be a little bit more consistent. I could see him sort of being someone that could pick up a couple titles and could cause some damage on the tour in general if he strings some more consistency together. So, yeah, really a fantastic match, a lot of fun to watch. And also note on Nico Jarry, he really finished the season well last year. He got into the top 20. His hard court season post US Open was really strong. And I think you and I both expected him to have a little bit more of a positive start to this year. And it's been a little bit disappointing. He lost early-ish in Australia. He really hasn't had the results continue in the way that he finished last season. He has had a coaching change. He switched. He was looking, I guess, for a little bit more experience. His coach now is a former coach of Diego Schwartzman, so obviously familiar with South American player and somebody who, was inside the top 10 and competed at a very high level. It's been sort of a rocky start to their relationship. Who knows what they were working on or trying to change, but it seems in recent weeks he's been able to string a couple good results together. He beat Alcaraz on clay before Indian Wells. He kind of came back from the brink against Draper in the first round here. He's going to face Casper Ruud in the next round. So, I mean, I think he'll be looking just to take some positives out of this week. I think he really is comfortable on clay. You can kind of see the way that he builds his point, that he is a bit of a clay court player, like a lot of Latin American players are. And so I'm intrigued to see how his form hopefully improves over the clay court season. He's ranked, I think, 23, 24 now, so dropped a couple of points. He'll certainly be looking to get back inside the top 20 and really kick on from here. So a big week for him, and good to see that he is hanging around into a second week at a Masters now and see if he can cause some more damage.
Yeah, for sure. I like Jarry. I think he's a great player, and I think he can do well across all three surfaces as well, but I agree that clay is probably his best. I remember watching him play at United Cup, and Jamie Falol, which I believe is his grandfather, was a really great player. And so I think that is a cool kind of behind the scenes kind of relationship that those two have, and he helps to coach Jarry as well. And he was saying, what does Jarry have to do to get to the top 10 where Jarry really wants to be? And Falol was saying that he has a very complete game. He plays a very complete game. He can play well at the net. He has a big forehand, a big backhand. He has a good serve. It's about getting it where his weapons are big enough where they can really compete with the rest of the tour. But I think that Ruud is playing fantastic, but he's also, he's beatable. If Jarry plays his absolute best, that's a match that he can win. I think that's going to be a great match as well. Jarry beat Ruud in Geneva last year in a 3-set match that I remember well. And if Jarry brings some of the Chilean fans with him, that atmosphere can help. And I like what you said about the crowd atmosphere helping to bring the best out of of players in Jarry as well, because I think that's what people don't really understand is like the quiet kind of, like what you're saying, that kind of atmosphere where everything is supposed to be really chilled back. You're not really supposed to yell out or get hyped up and that kind of thing. It doesn't really help the players either. I mean, they get hyped by a crowd atmosphere and that helps them to play better. So it's like, I think that kind of a thing really helps out Jarry in that kind of situation, and also helped out Seyboth Wheel. Shows a great atmosphere for both. But yeah, we'll see how Jarry can do for the rest of this tournament. But yeah, I think he's a player to watch, and I hope he can keep growing his game and growing those weapons to get even bigger, because he's one of the more complete players, I think, on the tour. It's just about getting those weapons right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said.
And then you get to hop onto the WTA side. So Sabalenka lost a big one to Kalinina. That was a big match early on. Sabalenka did not play her best. Kalinina was playing well though. And Sabalenka, for example, won 8 out of 26 of her second serve points. It was kind of a weird match. On the big points, Sabalenka was hitting a lot of kind of unforced errors. It felt like she was a little bit more uncorked on her big swings than usual, hitting a lot of big shots into the net and stuff like that. And yeah, I felt like it was kind of a weird match from her end, especially winning a breadstick in the second set, then losing a breadstick in the third set. Kalinina was returning really well. She had a really good read on the Sabalenka serve. Kalinina just getting great depth consistently. I felt like throughout the match, from what I saw of it, just constant depth that I think was hurting Sabalenka, who I felt like was a little bit more impatient to hit big shots. So I felt like that was one of the big things that kind of happened in the match. Also, I felt like Arena probably on Miami low bouncing court was doing as well. I felt like oftentimes she was waiting for the ball to bounce a little bit too much, and then she was swinging from way down low and hit a lot of shots into the net. So I felt like Sabalenka was a bit off her game. Obviously, there's just off-court stuff going on with Sabalenka that we just don't want. I don't want to say exactly what happened to affect the match, but I think that's a big thing to just know about that's happening off court, and we don't know exactly how that affected the match or whatever. But yeah, it was Kalinina, I think, was too good for this version of Sabalenka that showed up.
Yeah, look, I mean, really awful personal circumstances happening off court. And we know that the way media is these days, it's very invasive on somebody's personal life. And some of the headlines post this loss, I think, have been a little bit unfair given the circumstances of what she has on her plate. And certainly, not. I don't think players want excuses, but they're human beings. And I think she didn't bring her best tennis this week. Having said that, though, I don't think she brought her best tennis to Indian Wells. She got very close with Peyton Stearns. I don't think she played a great third round match there. She obviously lost relatively early. I think, post Australian Open, she had a little bit of time off. And since then, she's had losses to Vekic and, Kalinina and strange kind of, not her best. So she had a little bit of time off. That was for kind of a medical thing. And then, now some personal stuff happening. So again, I think I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she takes a little bit of time off or if she just decides to attack the next tournament. I'm not sure. But I think, she'd certainly agree that this wasn't her best day. But knowing Arena and knowing the fighter that she is, she'll be back at some point this season. And I think we all just wish her well and hope that she, gets the time that she needs to feel good off court, and she'll certainly come back around.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main thing. Tennis always comes second to circumstances like that. So,
yeah.
But the whole tournament has been just a lot of upsets. Been 10 out of 16 players of the round 16 aren't supposed to be there. So that's something that's going on.
Yeah. Same as Indian Wells, really, though. A lot of upsets there, too. Yeah. And I think also for the women, we're talking about these are the first two Masters of the year for the men. This is the fourth Master of the year for women and the fourth Master in the last 7 weeks for the women. So It's been a crazy, crazy schedule post the Australian Open. It's really not stopped. There's been 500s. There's been 1,000 tournaments pretty much since the AO wrapped up. And that means they've gone to Europe, to the Middle East, to California, to Miami. It's been nuts. So I think this is the time of year where we do see a lack of consistency in the women's tour. I think that's reason for more debate around the way that the women's tour is scheduled and organized. There's no need for this to already be the fourth Masters tournament of the year for the WTA. And, I think that, again, this is proof in the pudding of you diminish the quality of your product when you are doing too much. And it gives the women's game a bad rap in terms of, women are so inconsistent, and that's why we have weird results every week. That from that point of view, I think if you take everything into consideration, it's not all that surprising that we have weeks like this where results are so skewed. And again, I think that transition from the conditions in Indian Wells to the conditions in Miami are really huge, and some players deal with that better than others, especially when you look at the women's game. With the men's game, some things just, really don't change. Big servers are always going to kind of be rewarded, bar 10%, here and there. But the women's game isn't built on those same foundations unless you're Rublev. So I think playability and the way that a surface plays in a way affects the WTA tour even more in terms of outcomes. So that I think is a big factor. And then, I think we're also dealing with a top 10 that we know 6 or 7 of those players have had real question marks around them since the start of the year. Jabeur injury-wise, question marks. Vondrousova injury-wise, question marks. Rybakina illness, question marks. And the list kind of goes on. So we've had our own kind of real inconsistencies there. So to see the draw where it's at the moment, again, not all that surprising. But then also some names that have been kind of consistently popping up and kind of causing some trouble. Daniel Collins has been hovering around, and a name that has been bothering top players this year, and especially in faster hard court conditions. So good to see that she's still kind of having a run. We know that Coco has wobbled at times. We know that Garcia's been on and off at times. So just a lot of question marks over people's health and fitness and well-being and kind of what's going on there. So, but the one woman who seems to be steady Eddie is Miss Swiatek, and she certainly came through a tough battle yesterday against Noskova again, playing each other in back-to-back weeks, and Noskova really showing that she can be an issue on fast hard courts. But yes, Swiatek looking really impressive and looking very locked in and focused. And I think she'll really fancy herself to win this title and get the Sunshine Double done again.
Yeah, I think so. Swiatek is the one to beat. Absolutely, like always. Noskova really gave her a good run for her money, though. I mean, it was an incredible comeback. She saved set point in the first set. She was down 5-2, and then she was down 5-2 again in the second set. Came back and pushed it to 5-4. And I think Noskova also showed that she can really trouble Swiatek. So I think that has potential for a good rivalry. I saw some people saying they don't think it's going to be much for a rivalry. I really think otherwise.
And I'd love to point out with Noskova, the way that she plays Swiatek, I think should be a little bit of a guiding platform for what you talked about with Sakkari last week in the way that Sakkari approached the game, because Noskova is a big ball striker from the baseline like Sakkari likes to be. But I do think Noskova, at 19 years old, there's obviously areas of improvement for her. But I think she used variety a lot better to her advantage. She brought Swiatek into the net. She used a drop shot. She pinned her out wide and then was brave enough to take the backhand down the line fairly often in that match, especially when she was playing free. She served well and served big. And I think someone like Sakkari could look at that as a blueprint and get a better understanding of actually how to play Swiatek with the weapons that Sakkari has. And, Noskova's demonstrated a couple of times now why that's an effective tactic against Swiatek. And she's only 19 years old. So I think Noskova is certainly, we've talked about her before, but certainly a name to look out for. And I wouldn't be surprised if she gets herself inside the top 20 this season and really kind of kicks on from here.
Yeah, I agree. I saw a lot of people saying that Swiatek wasn't having her best day, and she wasn't. But that being said, I felt like Noskova is the player that was just, like you said, was playing a smart match. And even if she doesn't come out with the win at the end, I felt like that the fact that she was taking those risks, that can really hurt Swiatek. I really like her fearless approach to the tennis game. I feel like she has a lot to offer. So it's good to see her doing that. Swiatek, obviously, I felt like a lot of unforced errors. She hit 20 unforced errors in the first set alone. I remember that. And she was being not very precise, just hitting a lot of errors. And it just felt wobbly from her mentally as well. But still, at the very end, she was down love 40 in the last game at 5-4. And she hit like 4 or 5 winners and called it quits after that. So, I closed the match out in style. And I think that Iga is the big favorite. Just like Carlos and Yannick on the men's side, it's hard to see who beats them. It's kind of hard to see who will beat Iga here, just by kind of her lonesome. Yeah. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But yeah, just a few other things on the women's side as well. Collins is kind of having a sneaky run, I think, actually, through the tournament, which is very good. I think she beat Potapova, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And so she's doing well. And like I was saying, there's been 5 top 10 players went out. Ostapenko lost. Zhang lost to Azarenka, who's doing well again. Jabeur keeps losing. But like you said, it's not that surprising at this point. These different players have their own problems they're dealing with, and also they've just been kind of in an off period. Let's hope that they can pick it up like Sakkari has, who's been doing quite well this week now with David Witt rather than Tom Hill in her corner. So hopefully that. And
also shout out to Emma Navarro having another big week in Miami. Her and Iga Swiatek are the only 2 women to have more than 20 wins this season. That's big. So Emma's really been on a tear in 2024. Something seems to have clicked for her. Another player that, plays well in these types of environments. I think you look at Emma coming from college ball. Peyton Stearns really pushed Vika again this week. And then, I think it was Blair Hanley asked Daniel Collins, you know, who's going to replace you in the commands of the world, you know, the way that Collins approaches her matches on the WTA side. And she mentioned maybe Peyton Stearns, but Navarro certainly doesn't have that kind of outward college ball type of like mentality where she really whips up the crowd. She's very to herself, very like professional, calm, quiet, cool, calm, collected, kind of like a Sinner almost, like
Sure.
In her approach to her tennis. But she also hits a big ball. She's moving well. I think she's gotten a couple tight matches now under her belt and sort of backs herself in these 3-set conditions and tough conditions. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting next round match she set up for herself with Pegula, who hasn't had the greatest season so far this year either. Maybe she's playing herself into a little bit of form. Also a top 10 player that's had a coaching change, had a couple injuries. So some question marks over, you know, where Pegula is in her season. But I think if Navarro can put herself in a position to get to a quarters and a semis here, she'll be riding really high and feeling really good about this first third of the season. And I haven't seen her play too much on clay, honestly, so I don't really know what to expect from her because she's still relatively new to the tour, quite a youngster, but a very exciting prospect. And, you know, shout out for her for being on such a tear this season already.
Yeah, I mean, she's just such a power baseliner. She doesn't really like coming to net very much, but she just crushes it from the back and is such a good athlete that she just, her backhand is so impressive. The way she hits it and the way she gets around the ball to hit it. Yeah, she's going to be a problem. And she just beat Paolini in a great match. Paolini is a great fighter. She pushed that to 3 sets, but I mean, she's blown by a lot of people, and I think she's guiding towards the top 10 spot. I think she's really getting up there. So,
and there's opportunity for it, as we said. Like, there's so much movement right now, and that honestly, from 5 onwards, between 5 and 20, could be any girl's game by the end of this year in terms of how the top 10 shakes out. Yeah. By the time, you know, points from Roland Garros and Wimbledon drop off, and with the congested Olympic schedule as well, let's see how it shakes out. But I mean, I think she's going to be someone that's certainly got her eye on taking advantage of that opportunity. She's well inside the top 20 now, and if she can finish off another good little run here and use the crowd to her advantage, then she'll certainly be a contender for top 10 by the end of the season.
Yeah, well, I was going to say about the men's side as well is the same thing. Is like there's a lot of opportunity from around the number 5, number 20. So I think we're going to see a lot of shakeup on both tours, which is good.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, I think that's good. And now for the weekly power rankings, this is much based on the Miami event. A lot of the same customers at the top of the rankings. We've got Alcaraz, Sinner, Medvedev, Zverev, and then de Minaur has been in awesome form. You have him at 5. I've got him at 6, but a lot of the same people. Paul, Dimitrov, Rude. You know, that on my list, they're doing well. Monfils, he's still inside my power rankings. This should actually not be a plus. He's not coming in, but he's at number 9 in my power rankings. Because he's still in the tournament. He's going to play Alcaraz, and Mahac has been playing awesome. He beat Tiafoe in straight sets in Australia, just playing every shot in the book, and I love to see it from him. He's been playing absolutely fantastic in this tournament and took out a big name like Rublev. So yeah, he's in my top 10. Who do you have in your top 10? I see one familiar name at number 8. I think you like to keep him in there.
Well, Ben Shelton, I mean, I think he's taking care of business, which is what I expected of him this week. And hopefully he'll get one more match under his belt to set up another kind of big quarterfinal meeting, I think, with Alcaraz this time around. So, he'll certainly be fancying his chances. I really like his approach to his tennis at the moment. I think, as I said, he's taking care of business. He's, in that top 15 conversation. He's going to see how he can push on from here. Again, it's only his 2nd season on tour, and I think he's handling everything really well. I think he has a good coaching team around him, and this is the type of environment that I think he can thrive in. He's got a lot of crowd support, Florida Gators, and he is feeling good about his tennis. I really like his mentality. He always comes in with a level of confidence and self-belief that I think is really key for young players who are looking to disrupt, top players at the moment. And I think he makes himself a name that's a part of the conversation. And I think he said in an interview at the US Open last year where he wants to be that guy that someone sees in the draw and goes, I would prefer not to have him in my half of the draw. And the reality is that serve is such a big weapon that I think nobody wants to see him in their half of the draw, just because it's not an easy thing to compete against. And the top players are still able to figure it out. But if we're talking about anybody in and around him, similar ranking to him, he's really going to fancy himself and, puts everything on the line. So that's why, for me, he moves up into the 8th spot. I'm impressed by his attitude and his game.
Yeah, well, no, it's good. It's I think it's good we have different power rankings. It's your power rankings. I like for you to have control. That's good.
I also added Arnaldi in at my 10th spot. I mean, obviously had a great week at Indian Wells, taking out Novak Djokovic, who, again, with all of these types of losses, as much as one questions, why the top players didn't take care of business, I also think sometimes, especially around the lesser known names, that some of the credit where credit is due can be lost a little bit. Arnaldi played a great match against Djokovic, and he's playing some great matches here, and he's certainly putting himself in and amongst the conversation. These past 2 weeks, he's a name most of us didn't know. I mean, he was ranked outside of the top 100, so these results are certainly going to help him, I think, probably break the top 80, top 70 at this point. So he'll certainly be very pleased with himself. And he's a youngster too, a young Italian. And, I think it can be hard to have a really killer, stellar week and then the next week back that up. So to make it into the second week of a Masters, I think he'll be really pleased with himself. So wanted to give him a nod, but, certainly could have gone to Mahac as well, who's been playing some big ball this year. I also put Morajan in my 9th spot. Again, similar kind of feelings around. He's been in and amongst it. He's been a name that's sort of been a disturbance for top players, and kind of looking to see, if he's able to take advantage of his opportunity now, playing Mahac in the next round, and I think he'll fancy himself. So, Monfils is, I would, certainly in the conversation for me as well in terms of power rankings. I'm just not fancying his chances over Alcaraz this evening. But yeah, I mean, for him to be of his age and in and amongst the conversation at 2 back-to-back Masters events, I mean, I'm so pleased for him, and hopefully he'll enjoy his clay court season and the Olympics being in France. I'm sure he's got an eye on that as well and wanting to represent his country.
Yeah. Well, it's so good to see Gael still being able to play his kind of, super athletic game at this age, and not just, he could just be playing a game where he's just cracking winners all the time. I don't feel like that's what he's doing. He's still hitting crazy shots all the time. And that's what's been so fun to see with Monfils. Morajan will be playing Demonor next, but yeah, that should be a very exciting match as well. But yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, our power rankings for the ATP. And then the WTA, we got Swiatek, Sabalenka, Goff. I've got Navarro at number 4. I think I had her at number 4 last week as well, but because for me, the way I do the power rankings is like, I literally do the 10 players I'm the most excited about at the moment. The WTA rankings mean, like, I'm just like, I'm excited about Emma Navarro. I'm putting her in the 4th spot. That's just the way I kind of see the power rankings. And she's just been so impressive, whether it's beating Sabalenka last week or, just playing, what I was saying, tennis that is so solid, so athletic, so under the radar, but so impressive every time you watch her. I mean, she's consistently hitting speeds and, height over the net that stays so low consistently that I think that even though she might not be the flashiest player around or coming to net or hitting slice and dice shots, I just think that she's just going about her business, and she's about as high tier as you get at the moment. She's one of the most informed players, and I think that that's why I'm so excited about her guiding up the rankings. And listen, like you said, she's still new, so I hope that she can make a name for herself and can kind of keep adding these tools to her game, because she's got loads of time. I do like the college tennis route, and I just hope that she can kind of keep improving on herself and keep climbing up the ranks in the way that she has. So yeah, I'm excited about Navarro.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I had Rybakina in my 4th spot just because I think when she's on, and and playing good tennis. She's certainly a contender here. She's saying she feels not 100% still. She had 8 days off and feeling some soreness from, recovering from the first couple of matches. So let's see how she does. But these conditions certainly favor her. And now that Sabalenka is out, and also as we've been filming, Coco Gauff has lost as well to Caroline Garcia. So, another top name here out of the mix. So Rybakina will fancy herself, but certainly opportunities for Emma Navarro to kind of keep pushing on. I still have Sakkari up in my power rankings. She did get a walkover today, Kalinina, pulling out with a thigh injury. So she's into the quarterfinals. Another good week, and her conditioning and Greek background certainly means she likes these hot, humid conditions. So she'll, be looking to build on the confidence from the previous week, and let's hope she can really use that to her advantage. I've also got Pegula back in my list. Great to see her put a couple of wins together. This is a home tournament for her. She lives in Miami, so I think it's nice to see her in and around the mix, and it'll be a very interesting matchup between Pegula and Navarro. So looking forward to that match. Azarenka got back into my power rankings. Really great match. She played against Peyton Stearns, then got another good win today against Katie Bolter, who's been producing some good results of late this year. So some really nice wins for her. And again, another professional who's won this tournament before. Been there, done that. Just one of those names that approaches the game with such professionalism and high expectations of herself, and just continues to deliver and give her best out there, which is freaking awesome. Alexandrova, on again, off again player this season. We keep saying, is she playing herself into form? Is she not? We vaguely talked that a little bit in some 500 tournaments post the AO, and then she kind of hasn't been around, and now here she is again, a part of the conversation. So, she's a player we certainly have high expectations for. She has a high peak, just hasn't been consistent with it this year. And then Colin too, I just love to have in my power rankings. When she's on, she's on. She'll love these conditions. She lives in Florida. Again, college ball player. She's going to be going for it, and got nothing to lose really. So expected to play some more big ball this week.
Yeah, Colin's definitely made it into mine as well. She got so close against Rybakina and Swiatek, playing such good ball. Yeah. She's one of the most fearless, players on the tour. Such a passionate player as well. She just hits the ball so hard, and I think that when she's on her day, she can beat anyone. And so I think she deserves to be in the power rankings. Kostyuk stayed in mind because she withdrew from Miami, but I felt like she's had a good event. Maybe I should have knocked her down a few spots, but she withdrew from the tournament, so didn't have much to say about her. She's been playing really well, and did really well in Indian Wells. Rybakina is at 6. She's not been at her best game, but I agree that she should be right there with the top 4, and hopefully she can climb back to that position. And I think she should like these conditions. She got to the final here last year and only lost to Kvitova. So, hopefully that she can do well. Sakkari climbed in. She's continuing to play a really, really good ball, serving great, and just the serve +1 and just, the aggression all over the court, really good. And Paolini is fighting well, has that 1,000 her bank. I agree that it's crazy. That happened 3 Masters 1000s ago. It's when the world is the WTA schedule. Yeah. And then Collins is in there at 9. And then I have Alexandrova, who I'm happy to put in mind because she's been playing great, and she's a name I'm excited about when she is in form. I wish I could have found a way to put Azarenka in because she kind of left my bank. But shout out to Azarenka. You're not in the power rankings, but you're doing fine anyway. So you're doing well for yourself despite not being in my power rankings. All right. Well, that will do it for us for this week's podcast. We'll see you guys next week. Talk about more stuff Miami. And that's going to be a big podcast. I'm excited for that one.
Good. Me too. I think it sounds like our predictions have remained the same. Our picks for Sinner and Swiatek to win are very much still alive. So let's check in with you guys next week and see if we got it right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like all that stuff. Quality Shot Tennis. We just hit 10K, by the way, which is exciting with the subscribers. So yeah, let's keep that going. Let's get to 15K. Keep that going. And thank you to all of y'all. And yeah, I'll see you guys at the next one.
Bye, guys.